All right. Hey, today we have Julie Snow, founder of Snow Kreilich Architects. Hey, Julie, thanks for being here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. So can you start? Just tell me a bit about how you got into this industry, how you got to where you are today.
Well, I had a lot of help. I think that's probably everybody's story. My idea was to do practice differently.
Mhm.
And so just having a lot of people that believed that that was possible uh, was really kind of the story of both my entry into the profession and support as we were growing.
Yeah. 5 years ago, Snow Kreilich got the AIA's top honor. When I was doing research for this interview, I see a lot of people regard you as a thoughtful, top-notch Twin Cities architect. What do you think sets your firm apart?
Well, like any business, I suppose what set your firm apart are the people.
Mhm.
And frankly, we get new and greater people, more diverse people, because we do have a high standard of design. And so when people come to us, they know they're going to be working with really high performing individuals, and they're going to be expected to produce the highest design with the highest aspirations.
Yeah, yeah.
That,
Um,
that that's motivating.
Yeah, definitely. We wrote about your firm kind of around that time, a few years back, and um, there's a lot of diversity within your firm, right? How do you think your experience differs as a woman in the industry who has risen to this place of such acclaim?
But it's hard to say differs from what.
Sure.
So I've never like been a guy, and so I think the sort of beginning of any career is having very high aspirations for what you're going to do for and to basically think differently about design. And all of that is, I mean, frankly, the identity I have as a woman was not my focus. It was how I wanted to proceed and how I wanted our architecture to be. And so you start with these high aspirations. At the same time, you never want to lose your identity as a person. And I think that's true with all firms. I mean, right now we're seeing a greater diversity of greater racial diversity in the profession. It's slow, but it's happening. And I think the idea there is without compromising identity, aim high
Yeah, yeah,
and don't lose track of that.
yeah. So
Those
you
aspirations.
you've mentioned that a couple times, high aspirations and
Yeah.
thinking differently. How do you think about design?
Well, all the time,
Yeah, sure. Right.
pretty much. I mean, I think what's interesting to me is understanding that architecture has this ability to transform our experiences, our lives, and our cities.
Mhm.
And without that, I mean, without sort of understanding the scale of experience, largely an interior experience, sometimes exterior, but understanding the city and understanding basically the basis of design, which is, how does this building work for people?
Yeah. Um, I've heard a lot. Cynthia Freud has specifically mentioned this to me about the importance of unique design in our downtown
Yes.
Minneapolis specifically. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think the Twin Cities or Minneapolis specifically have its own brand of architecture? Do you think there's something unique we're doing? Is there are in how we're rethinking, the urban
Well, I
core?
think, yeah, that we are definitely needing to rethink our urban core. We were just talking a minute ago about, the vibrancy of Lynn Lake or the vibrancy of North Loop or Northeast. Downtown is not vibrant these days. And I think architecture can help. I think it's the quality of architecture can be very magnetic to people. I mean, you can do buildings that people really want to see. And I'm not exactly sure I can name a building downtown built recently that people are dying to get downtown to see.
Sure.
So I think we can do better. I think
Yeah.
we have to do better. That makes sort of magnetic quality, that sort of experiential quality of a building needs to be combined with a really interesting program.
Yeah.
You have a very interesting program, and by programming, I mean what kind of experience is envisioned, what is offered by the building. If it's an art museum, if it's a music venue, or any of those things, you know, how are those things becoming must-see destinations as well? And
Yeah.
so I I really think there is hope for downtown. I think it needs a couple of those magnets, and I think it needs to be reinvented not as a business district, but as a central district for Minneapolis, you know,
Yeah.
representing all of the neighborhoods.
Yeah. Thinking about North Loop, I mean, do those magnets exist in North Loop, do you think?
Yeah, they do. I mean, with venues, with just the sort of, you know, I have to say, there's a certain energy to this place. There's a lot of street activity. There are no skyways, so there's no pulling people off the street. Some of the most vibrant places in North Loop are the alleys where people are moving from, you know, a loft apartment to a food venue, moving up to the Twin Stadium is just wonderful. I mean, with galleries and just opportunities to be in public.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
huge.
it is. Speaking of the skyways, I mean, do you have thoughts on that? Obviously there's the convenience in the middle of winter, but there's also that it creates that kind of separation of people, separation of work, and just existence in a downtown.
Yeah, well,
What are
you
your
know,
thoughts?
there's plenty of cold climates that have not resorted to the skyway.
Sure.
And you can see that in I'll give you a for instance, Chicago has a very cold and bitter climate. But what happens in Chicago is that they've got these core areas in the center of the block, and then they've got mid-block entrances and exits. And so you see people coming in on the south side, turning left and going out the west side,
Mhm.
you know, and basically there's this brisk moment in between where you have an 80 feet from building face to building face that people are running across. I get that a mid-block crossing is a little uh, problematic for traffic, but they do it. It happens all the time. And I feel like the skyways are one of the reasons it catered to business folks. So when our office was downtown in the Rand Tower, the activity in the Skyway was from, you know, in the mornings, in the evenings, and around lunch. And that's not a living city. You know, that isn't that doesn't make a vibrant space.
Right.
So you know, you have to have evenings, you have to have all day long, you have to have opportunities for people to get together.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think we're going to be getting people coming back to downtown unless we have that.
Sure. Um, I've been hearing that a lot. So how would you say the Twin Cities compare to maybe other metro areas as far as design?
Well, you know, I think we've always prided ourselves on a high standard of design, and we have some very, very good buildings. I mean, we've got, I mean, I think the IDS Center is one of the best civic buildings ever, you know, particularly in a downtown. At the same time, I think we haven't really redefined downtown as something that's different than business. It's always been the business district.
Mhm.
And thus you can see business owners are making decisions about how it looks. And, you know, it's more focused on business than people.
Right. Um, being in this kind of new era post-COVID, do you think that's going to change? It seems like it might have to change, that there'll be no other option, right? What do you have thoughts on what the future could be?
Well, I do. I mean, and this is nothing new. People are really understanding that we really need to reinvent. Um, our downtown district is more than just a business center. It has to be a center for fun. It has to be a center for commerce, for retail. It's not going to be big boxes anymore. It's going to be smaller shops. It's got to be where you go for interesting food. It's got to be where quite a few people live.
Mhm.
So I think in order to really attract people back to those buildings, it's clear, and I think everyone knows this, that we have to reinvent our first floor in a way, our downtown first floor in a way that is much more exciting and interactive
Yeah. Um,
and diverse.
sure,
That's
right. Definitely. Um,
it's
and
so
events are big. Just trying to make this segue. So CHS Field, that might be one of the best known projects you've designed. What are some projects you've worked on recently that you're especially proud of, or that bring unique design elements, or bring in some of these things that you're talking about right now?
Well, we did a project in Syracuse, New York, which had a very diverse population. But the diversity was not visible downtown. It was a business district just like ours. And so we did a project for the Allen Foundation. And the idea is to take folks that are doing food trucks or doing sort of unique um, uh, commercial retail opportunities and bringing them into a space that's downtown so that diverse population is visible to the city.
Mhm.
And it makes it a very exciting place to go.
Yeah.
So the first floor of the building is a marketplace that has food options, retail options, bar, and then upstairs is the Allen Foundation on the second floor with a lot of training and a lot of um, gathering spaces. And on top of that are 3 levels of housing.
Yeah.
So it's all uh, low-income housing.
Sure.
And what's interesting about it is it's visible. Now you have folks that are visible in the city. The second project I want to mention is a project that we just finished in um, St. Louis. It's the MLS Stadium. And St. Louis is a super soccer town. And so this one was really designed to welcome all the different neighborhoods of St. Louis to its downtown core. And the downtown core had an area that was all sort of parking lots and off ramps from the freeway. And so those off ramps had been abandoned or scheduled to be abandoned. And so this became an opportunity to put a downtown stadium. And so the idea was to create a downtown stadium that you could actually see the city from.
Mhm.
So from the seats along the west, you can look up, through this opening in the building toward the arch.
Yeah.
You can see from the north, you can see Olive Street, which is full of bars and fun places to go. From the south, there's a large bar for gathering. It's an enclosed area. And that gives out onto Market Street, which is the sort of termination of the mall, the Independence Mall.
Yeah.
So to me, it's really integrated in the city. It's not like a spaceship that's landed and is completely enclosed, and you could be anywhere when you go inside.
Mhm. Yeah. And
The things that I think we need to think about
yeah.
build in our downtowns.
Right, and that feeling is present in both CHS Field and I would say Target Field too. Of you look up and there's the skyline, right?
Yeah, that's a wonderful moment. And I mean, I think the location of Target Field was really brilliant
Yeah,
on the part of the Twins,
yeah,
or all of the people that were involved in that decision.
right. I agree. I did very, very cool stuff. So, and you're an educator too, right? Are you teaching right now?
Well, I'm going to WashU tomorrow to review projects, their final project.
Sure.
So I keep my hand in it. I'm not running a studio at the moment.
Yeah. What, I mean, from talking to students and just being involved in this, what values, priorities are you seeing kind of coming into the industry?
What's really great is we see a whole new world of practices opening up, young practices. And uh, instead of answering about students, I'm going to talk about sort of new practices.
Mhm.
And I think what we're really seeing is their new practices are challenging models of architectural practice. And so we're seeing uh, new practices come into a field, a profession that is having huge social, environmental, and technological change.
Mhm.
And so young architects are responding to that by addressing very different uh, modalities of architecture. And so we're seeing, body, space, ecology, politics, and aesthetics all driving architectural design, which
Yeah.
is incredibly exciting. And so one of our own sort of, I think of them as homegrown, although they're now in Ithaca. Jennifer Newsom and Tom Carruthers had a practice here for quite some time. And they are really interested in body and space. And they do these wonderfully magnetic installations that just draw people to them because they give you a new sense of space around you.
Yeah.
And so architecture that does that is automatically magnetic and is a very powerful way of inviting people in.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
they're now in Ithaca. So we lost them.
Darn.
They'll be.
Um, yeah, I feel like I ask this of every architect I talk to, but does it ever feel like we, like architects, are kind of undoing a lot of things that were done in the 50s, or now trying to go from here was this car centered society. We want, we don't want to do it like this anymore.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's something really interesting about that. I mean, what I think is really interesting is that idea that the car-centric thing, we're figuring out not only does it suck up a ton of space, and I mean, let's not even talk about energy. So, the environmental aspects of it,
Mhm.
but it isn't even good for us.
Right.
It isn't even healthy.
Right.
I mean, and I love to drive cars. I do. I
Yeah.
just love driving cars,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be every trip.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be most of the trips. So it feels to me like that's a huge change. So reinventing cities around transit and around bike lanes is I think Minneapolis is working very hard at that. And I think they're succeeding in a great degree to replace automobile traffic with bike traffic and scooters. And I mean, it's a fun experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to the kind of people can actually be together instead of just in their cars.
Yeah,
Stadiums aren't just surrounded by giant surface parking lots. Downtowns aren't just made up of giant surface parking lots, right?
exactly. And I mean, we have guys in our studio that bike in from St. Paul every day, all year long.
Yeah.
It's
That's,
it's impressive. I mean, I'm impressed. I don't do
yeah,
that.
I'm impressed too. I don't do that either. Well, Julie, I don't really have any other questions. Was there anything you wanted to add that I didn't ask about?
No, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think right now we're in a very interesting point in design and in cities.
Mhm.
And so I think let's stay tuned.
Yeah,
It's gonna get interesting.
right. Agreed. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure, JD.
Great to meet you. Take care.
Great to meet you. Bye.
Bye.